Okay, well, hi everyone, and welcome to Operation Parents webinar, Real Talk about Real Epidemic, Heroin, and Other Opiates. My name is Mary Beth Uberti, and I will be at the working of the webinar controls today. For those of you who are new to Operation Parent, our mission is to provide ongoing education, support, and hope to those raising teens and preteens in today's culture. In order for you to fully participate in this webinar, I would like to go over a few in-session features of our GoToWebinar product. On your webinar control panel, you will see an orange tab. It's at the very top of your little panel that popped up when you logged into GoToWebinar. This is a grab tab which allows you to open and minimize the control panel. So if you wish to view your screen without the control panel, you can click on the orange grab tab to minimize it. For now, please click on the orange grab tab to open your control panel so we can go over a few of the features. All attendees will be muted during this presentation. We would, however, like to hear from you via the questions section. About halfway down the control panel, you will see the questions section. There are two small panels to this. The top one will show you the questions you have already posted as well as any kind of answers you're getting back from us. Below that is another panel where you can send your own questions and comments by clicking on the white box, clicking in it where it says enter a question for staff. So I just want to see if we can make sure that is all working and everybody understands. So if you can just take a moment, find that box that says enter a question for staff, click in it, and I'd like you just to send us your first name and where you're joining us from. So please make sure you click the word send when you are done with your response so that we see it. So if you could just take a few minutes to go ahead and do that. I have Vivian from Illinois, Kelly from Crestwood. I have Denise in LaGrange, Kentucky, Nicole, Louisville, Kim in Goshen. I have Mary Lou in Missouri, Katie in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. Actually, I know where Montgomery County, Pennsylvania is. Katie, I am from Bucks County, Pennsylvania originally. So we are actually here in Louisville, Kentucky. I have a sailor from Shelbyville, and Sherry, I have Oldham County, and Eric from Louisville, Jennifer from Louisville also. I have Shelby, Indiana, and I have Mary from Arizona. Well, thank you, everybody, and I'm glad that works. So just keep in mind that as we're going through this presentation, you will not be able to verbally talk and ask questions, but you can send questions to me. And at the end of the presentation, I will go through the questions with Arlene and we'll get you your answers. But you can send the questions anytime during the presentation without a problem, and that way we will have a log of them as they come in. We will also, if you'll notice, you have a handout section directly above the question section. We have uploaded 3 handouts for you. You can just click on the handout to begin the download process. FYI, one of the downloads is actually the PDF version of this PowerPoint. So if you want to go ahead and download that one right now and print it, you can follow along. Lastly, we will be conducting polls during this session. I will put up our first poll now so that you can read it and answer and select your question and answer. You'll have about 20 seconds to answer the question. It's pretty easy. Usually you have, most of the questions are just one answer. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that, and once you see that, if you could just click on your answer, and I'll show everybody the results. Okay, I can see the results coming in. All right. I'm going to go ahead and a few more people are voting, putting in their answer. If you haven't put your answer in, I'm going to go ahead and close it in a matter of about 2 more seconds. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and share the responses with you. And as you can see, we have about a few educators in here. We have family members struggling with substance addictions. 17% are parents of teenagers and want to learn more. We have 22% are healthcare professionals and 39% are others. So thank you so much for doing that. Okay, we are recording today's session. So later in the day, you will receive an email from Operation Parent, which will include the recording link as well as a short survey. We hope that you will take a few minutes to answer our survey today. All right, so now I would like to introduce our presenter, Arlene Rice. Arlene is the co-founder of the Kentucky Harm Reduction Coalition and founder of the Gabriel Project 930. She's an advocate and educator for the use of naloxone to reverse opiate overdose effects. So thank you for being with us today, Arlene.
Thank you, Mary Beth. So glad you have invited me to come. I would like to say welcome to all the participants today. Thank you so much for being here. And before we get started, I do want to share a little bit about why I am here and why I do what I do. I am a nurse, as you can see, and I also have a divinity degree. And I have 4 children, and they're all adults, but 3 of them have a substance use disorder. My daughter is 3 years in recovery, and I have a son who's 4 weeks in recovery, and I have another son named Gabriel who died in 2013 from a combination of heroin and alcohol. So I am very passionate about sharing with parents my journey and the things that I've learned on this road and about what to do, what not to do, things that I wish that I would have known before my son Gabriel died. So that's my story, and we're going to go ahead and get started here in looking at what we're going to go over today in this webinar. We're going to review some behavioral trends that we are seeing in teens today. We're going to identify some different types of opiates and then talk about the signs and symptoms of opiate use. And then we're going to answer some questions that are really, really tough. But what do you do and where do you go for help if your child is using or if your child overdoses? And first of all, let's start out looking at some of the trends and what's out there. According to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, in 2014, there were 467,000 adolescents who were users of pain pills without a prescription. And then of those, 168,000 are addicted to prescription pain pills. And then when we're talking about heroin, when they did this, the survey, 28,000 teens between the ages of 12 and 17 years old admitted to using heroin, and 16,000 of those were current heroin users. That's about 500,000 teenagers that we're talking about in 2014. Now here it is 2016. I don't think they have the latest numbers out with that I'm aware of. But there is this connection between prescription drug abuse and heroin. And for many, heroin use starts with abusing opioid prescription pain medications. And every day, according to the Partnership for Drug-Free Kids, 2,500 teens try prescription medications for the very first time. And the most commonly abused drugs are among 12 and 13-year-olds. There are studies that have shown that early exposure, like preteen, to prescribed opioids can lead to addiction in teens, and 9 out of 10 start with pain pills leading to heroin. So one of the goals is to help you see that there is this connection between opioid prescription medication and the possible progression to heroin, even if that prescription for an opiate or an opioid is prescribed for a legitimate injury, say like from a sports injury or they've had some type of a surgery. So at this point in the webinar, I'm going to turn this back over to Mary Beth. We're going to conduct our first poll here. Our second poll, sorry.
Okay, everybody. All right, you should be seeing a poll showing up on your screen now. And the question is, where do you think teens get their prescription drugs? So if you can go ahead and post your answers, click on your answers. We'll give it a few more seconds for answers to come in, and then we'll shut down the poll. Okay, so as you can see, about 9% believe from medicine cabinets with taking without asking, 4% from friends or relatives, 9% given to them free from friends or relatives, and 91% saying all of the above. So we will shut down that poll and continue on, and Arlene will answer that question for you.
So again, coming out of the Partnership for Drug-Free Kids, prescription drugs are fairly easy to get according to teenagers. And if you look at your screen there, you will see on the right-hand side that 52% of teenagers said that they get their opiates from friends or family for free. And then 19% have taken them from a relative or a friend. And then 34% said that they have even purchased an opioid from a friend or a relative. Now, kids normally, this is the step in the drug ladder, again, out of the Partnership for Drug-Free Kids, an excellent resource. Kids normally will start to use cigarettes or alcohol and marijuana. And before the prescription drug abuse became prevalent, it was a very huge jump to go from the alcohol and the marijuana and to jump to the harder drugs like cocaine and heroin. But now that you have this prescription experience, this facilitates an easier transition to this progression. So we're going to look exactly how does that happen. So when you talk about prescription abuse to heroin, the person first becomes addicted to prescription pain medications. And then after you become addicted, your brain begins to crave that opiate high. So you have deep within your midbrain this reward system that's going on. So these cravings are really real, and they are very, very intense. So this craving leads to a search for a stronger and a more powerful high, and so for many that leads to heroin. And in some areas, heroin can actually be less expensive than the illegal purchase of prescription drugs. Now, as a parent or as someone, I will tell you from personal experience, when my adult children would come to me, they would ask me sometimes for $40 or $60 and sometimes $80. They either needed gas or they didn't have enough money for their electric bill. So I began to realize that when they began to ask me for increments of $40 and $60, that I've realized now that they were probably purchasing pills with the money that I gave them. And then, of course, when you switch over to heroin, you can get heroin for about $5 to $12 a bag. So just be aware that if your teenager is asking you for increments or $20, $40, or $60, that could be a red flag as what something may be going on with that. So let's just review opiates and opioids. There is a difference. At the top of your screen, you'll see the opiate plant, and then at the bottom, you'll see a bunch of pills. So the opiates are things like heroin and morphine. Opioids are synthetics. They're made by pharmaceutical companies. You know, you have your Roxicet, your Percocets, your Lortabs, your Vicodins, things like that. So when we go on to the next screen, you're going to see a couple of things here, and I just included this so you just, if you find anything, any pills in your kids' backpacks or in their pockets or in their room, and you don't know what they are, we're going to talk about the markings on the pill. But first, let's look at the heroin at the top in your left-hand corner. There's different types of heroin that is out there, and you have your black tar and your brown mud and your white china. And then when you go over to the right, you'll see fentanyl. Now today, what some of the drug dealers are doing, they're mixing the fentanyl with the heroin, and that's where you're seeing a rise in overdoses. But in the hospitals, we use fentanyl as an anesthetic when people are in surgery and sometimes for pain. And then the right-hand side, you'll see a patch. That's often used in oncology patients. It's used in veterinarian clinics. But what happens with someone who might be abusing like a fentanyl patch, if you give, like say maybe you've got cancer and some of your fentanyl patches are missing. What some teenagers will do and people that are actively using, they'll peel off the plastic and they will use it sublingually or chew it. So just be aware if you have a patch around, if they're missing, that this might be being abused. Now, the other things I want you to look at are the pills. You have your Oxycontin, you have your Opana, you have your Vicodin, you have your Lortab, Lorcets. These are all opioids. and they're made by pharmaceutical companies, but when you can buy them on the street, they can be quite expensive. But look at the markings, like when you look at the OC and the 80 on the Oxycontin, that identifies that drug. But when you look at the Opana, it doesn't say the word Opana on it. It has E61310. So if you happen to find a pill or any pills on your child or a teenager, if you don't know what the medication is, you can always Google it and Google those markings, and Google search is really good about coming up with identifying pills. Also, if you notice, look over at the Vicodin. If you flip the Vicodin over, there's a scoring thing, and this can be really real similar to like your prescription ibuprofen. So just make sure that you look at your markings if you don't know what it is. So, of course, again, your opiates can be like Demerol, morphine, fentanyl, codeine, oxycodone. But I want to hit on that bottle. Look at that bottle there. It says Bayer Heroin. Back in 1898, Bayer Pharmaceutical made heroin, and by 1899 there were patients who were developing a tolerance for heroin, and they wanted more. So even though that heroin was under FDA and it was controlled, heroin's been around for a long time. Now this slide is quite interesting here. Look at the difference. On the left-hand side, you will see a very, very lethal dose of heroin. Of heroin. And on the right, you're going to see a very lethal dose of fentanyl. Now, this photo is from the New Hampshire State Police Forensic Lab when they confiscated heroin and fentanyl. But on that left-hand side, that is 30 milligrams of heroin. And on the right, you have 3 milligrams of fentanyl. This is enough to kill an average-sized adult. Again, fentanyl originally was used as an anesthetic. So, and fentanyl, 100 times more potent than morphine and many, many more times potent than heroin. So what happens a lot of times, drug dealers generally don't know when, drug users don't know when their heroin is laced with fentanyl. So when they inject their usual quantity of heroin, they may inadvertently take a deadly dose and overdose and die. So when the dealers are including the fentanyl to improve the potency, their measuring equipment isn't usually fine-tuned. So again, just remember that this is less pure than the pharmaceutical version of the fentanyl. So its effect on the body is going to be more unpredictable. And heroin and fentanyl look alike. Now look at the fentanyl. It just looks like there's about maybe 18 grams or 18 little granules of salt there. So, but that's the potency of it. So you have to be really careful if you find that. And I'm going to turn this over to Mary Beth. Let's do another poll, Mary Beth.
Okay, everybody. We're going to launch another poll here. And how familiar are you with pink or pinky is the question. I'm going to launch it right now. You should be seeing it. Okay, so go ahead and place your answers. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this poll and share with you the answers. So we have most of the people saying, no, I've never heard of pinky or pink. 28% have heard of it, but really don't know much, and about 4% are very familiar. Okay, so let's go back and learn about pink and pinky.
All right, so what is pink? What is pink or pinky? Well, pink is an opioid, just like morphine and heroin, and it arrived in 2014, and it's been synthetically made in China. So it's 8 times more potent than heroin. It's called pink because it does have a pink hue to it, and it can be pink in color, like it can come in a pill form, it can come in a powder form, and it will always have like a pink look to it. It's not a prescription medicine. It is a cocktail of pink and fentanyl, which is sold in the street, according to the Resource for Health units. So it's a synthetic opioid known as pink or pinky. Now this can be crushed, it can be snorted, and some teenagers will put just a little bit on the end of their pinky finger and snort it that way. And the real name for the drug is U-47-700. And you can also, as you can see, you can obtain this online. And we say, wow, that's very interesting. And it is, if someone were to overdose on pink, you would use the reversal medication naloxone. Naloxone reverses in an overdose like to an opiate or to an opioid. It doesn't work on anything else but an opiate or an opioid. Now, as we had said, it can be ingested, it can be snorted, or injected, but also what a very popular way that teenagers are using it is rectally, and sometimes they'll have rectal bleeding from that or some nerve damage from that. So again, it's manufactured in China. It is also called U47-700, as you can see in the picture there. That's just a sample there. And in November 15th of this year, in Kentucky, and I don't know about other states, I do know have some other states, but this was made a Schedule I drug. So there are 6 states that have made this a Schedule I drug: Florida, Georgia, Wyoming, Virginia, Ohio, and Kentucky. And for those of you who may not know what that means, it just means that doctors cannot write a prescription for this. There is no medical use for this. It has a severe high potential for abuse, and there's a lot of severe safety concerns for it. So they've now made this illegal in these 6 states. So some other examples of Schedule I drugs might be like heroin, LSD, and ecstasy. So just again, doctors cannot write for this. There's no use for this drug called pink or pinky. So that's what a Schedule I drug is. So on pink or pinky, if you look at this particular one, you'll see in the middle there the pills are pink. On the right-hand side, you'll see the powder form, which has a pink hue to it. And on the left, you'll see a sample again of the U4700. And again, ingesting, snorting IV rectally. There recently were 2 deaths in Utah of 12, 13-year-olds, 80 deaths so far in the United States. And again, it just doesn't cause deaths, but it can cause a lot of rectal bleeding and nerve damage. So how do teens get it? How do they get this pink or pinky? Well, they can get it from their peers who might be selling it at school or on the street. They may be able to get it from like what they call head shops. That's where you can buy tobacco products and other drugs. And then there are these websites, and here are some of the websites that they can purchase them from. If you look at that right there. So just be aware where your child's going on the internet and on their phone, and if they're able to get that through the internet. Now we're going to camp here for just a minute. This was something that I was very, very unaware of in talking about warning signs of opiate drug abuse. And those 4 things are changes in behavior, personality changes, health problems, and personal appearance. And in my own experience, I don't know about you guys, but in my own experience, I really just attributed some of this just to the age that my teenager, that Gabriel was especially, and some of the changes in his behavior, just middle school stuff and high school stuff, and their brains growing and just their behavior. But usually behavioral changes is one of the very first visible signs of drug use. And some of those behavior changes might indicate that their teen might be using drug if they begin performing poorly academically. They're beginning to miss school and extracurricular activities, or maybe they're getting into conflicts, or they're getting into trouble at school. With my son Gabriel, he never ever got in trouble until he was about in his junior year, and but he was a compliant child. But I started to get complaints from teachers and classmates, and then I just noticed his behavior was changing a little bit. He got more secretive and isolated himself more. He became more disinterested in activities and hobbies. So you might see some of that and changing of friends or social circles, but the isolating themselves from friends or family is a big sign, or acting secretively. They may have this newfound demand for privacy or lack for respect for authority. They may become defiant or uncooperative or even hostile. They might violate their curfew or ignore the rules or lash out. Another thing is unexplained disappearances for significant periods of time. So just monitor and kind of keep in check those red flags that might come up. In their personality changes, they may have some mood swings, emotional instability, insomnia, highs, lows. With opiates, usually there's a lot of drowsiness and decreased motivation and lethargy. They may have some memory problems or poor concentration. The other thing that you'll see with opiate use is slurred speech, and then their behavior can become very manipulative and deceitful. And as far as their health problems are concerned, appetite changes was a big one for my son Gabriel. He couldn't like ingest whole meals. Like he would get nauseated and he would say, I just can't eat, my stomach is really upset. And I think that's when he was probably ingesting the opiate pills. A lot of insomnia and sleep disturbances, nausea, vomiting, sweating, headaches, things like that. Another significant weight loss. Coordination problems, and if they're snorting, you may see some nosebleeds. So those are just some of the signs. Now on the next slide here, we're going to look at, this is a very, very telltale sign of opiate use. And what I want you to do is look on the left-hand side of your screen. That is a very dilated pupil. And on the right-hand side of your screen is a very constricted pupil. When you have somebody that is abusing opiates, it's going to cause very pinpoint pupils. And normally in someone like you or I or someone who's not using, your pupil can become very dilated, like if you're in the dark. And then when you walk outside, like into the sunlight or something, it will adjust and it'll get smaller. With someone who's using, the pupil doesn't change. It doesn't change with the light or with the sun or with the darkness. It stays very, very constricted. So just want you to be aware that this is a telltale sign of opiate use. Always look at their eyes, always look at their pupils and see. And the other thing is looking sleepy or nodding off can be a sign of opiate use. Opiate depresses the central nervous system. It causes drowsiness. So a lot of times on the street or with people that are using, you'll hear like, oh, he's just nodding off. So you might not see it to that significance in this file, in this picture right here, but they might have like really droopy eyelids or just be really like sleepy looking all the time. And then opiates can cause a histamine release, and you might see them scratching or picking hair off their hands. I know this was real common with all three of my adult children who were using opiates. They would scratch their hands and they began to pick the hairs off their hands. So you might not see that, but that is could be a sign as well. Also, with the histamine release and opiate use, you might see more sneezing than usual, or a runny nose, or sniffling, or they might say, oh, I've got a cold or I've got allergies, and they're acting up. But a lot of times you'll see that histamine release coming in the form of sneezing or a runny nose. Now, there's not a picture here, but sometimes they'll also get really, really concentrated urine. I used to notice really concentrated urine, and my kids would forget to flush the toilet. So that could be a sign of dehydration, but it was really odoriferous too and real smelly. Now, if they are injecting, you might see tiny pricks on their arms or their legs or their thighs or their neck or their feet, under their fingernails, in between their toes. And you might only see one prick or two pricks, and you might even like say, oh, what is that? Might look like a tiny scab. Now in this picture, it's got a little bit of redness around it, but sometimes it's not red. Sometimes it just looks like they have a tiny, tiny scab, and it will always be at the site of a vein. So just, you know, they might try to wear long sleeves or whatever, but you can have that with them using and injecting that way. Now, objects, which can be related to opiate use. Now, you might notice your spoons are missing, or they may be carrying a bottle of water around and never drinking it. They may, you might find straws in your house, and you're like, what is this? You know, you might find that your Q-tips or your cotton balls are missing. So let's just go from the top to the middle to the bottom and just discuss a little bit. The whole top area there are objects that usually are used when they're injecting a bottle of water and a spoon. Usually they'll mix the heroin or the opiate in with a little bit of water. They'll take the lighter and burn it and mix it up and get it dissolved into a liquid. They'll take the tips off of the Q-tips and roll it into a ball. They'll take the needle and they'll put the tip at the end of the needle, and they'll draw up the medication that they've made, you know, in the spoon. And that is just a filter. They use the Q-tip and the cotton balls as a filter. Now, on that balloon there, I had a girl tell me that that's how she would get her opiates into the house, that her drug dealer would put the heroin into a balloon. So that's, you know, it really doesn't have to do with IV use, but she used her balloon to bring into the house. Now, the second line has to do with snorting. Now, you look at that toilet paper roll, and you're like, what in the heck? But with the pens, I used to find a lot of hollowed out pens, and they would be broken in half. And so just be aware if you're finding pens in your house that are missing, or the ink is missing out of it, or if you're finding a lot of straws, especially if they're cut in half, or if they have a drawer full of straws, or they're in their pocket, and you're finding them somewhere. just know that that could be a sign of snorting drugs. And rolled up dollar bills. There was a guy who told me he used an allergy bottle that looked like he was, always sniffing, because of his allergies. And actually he was mixing his opiate in with a squirt bottle, and he would just carry it and squirt it up his nose. Now, the toilet paper roll there and the aluminum foil, I had a teenager tell me that he would take his drug, put it on the aluminum foil, and put the lighter on the aluminum foil and mix it up that way with the water. And then the fumes, he would use the toilet paper roll to inhale the fumes. So just notice that if you're finding toilet paper rolls around, that, just odd things. Someone who is using opiates, if they're cutting up their drugs, they're going to have some type of a cutting paraphernalia, like a razor with mirrors or something to cut up, so they can divide their medication. And then the tie and the belt and the shoelaces. My shoes would come up missing their shoelaces. Well, shoelaces, belts, curtain rods, ties can be used as tourniquets. The other thing, locking themselves in the bathroom for longer than usual or really, really frequently. So just be aware that if you're finding some of these things, or you're missing Q-tips or spoons or pens and seeing things around, that could be a sign of opiate use. So let's ask this question. How is the paraphernalia in drugs, how are they hidden? How are they getting them into the home, or how are they doing? I will say this. If your child is using drugs, they will have their paraphernalia or drugs on their person or in close proximity always. No exceptions. They're going to have this on them nearby somewhere. So you're going to look. You're going to look inside of pockets and shoes and purses and backpacks, under and in between mattresses and toilet tanks. Could be under the breast. I had a teenage girl tell me, she wasn't a teenager, she was a young adult, that she got her drugs into the house because she was very well endowed, and she hid them under her breast to get past her parents. Had another guy tell me he taped his to his leg, and another one, I hid them in the bushes outside. I hid them in the car or in the garage. My parents never go into the garage, and so I kept my drugs out there. In a cigarette box if they smoke. Now this is, I had a young girl who was in her 20s tell me that. Altoid containers, but they never have Altoids. Or check those containers. Check behind cell phone batteries if they have an old phone. Behind dressers. I had another girl tell me that in the living room of her parents' house there was a couch table, and so she kept her drugs in the living room in a drawer that no one ever got into. They will put them inside of socks or clothes or coats or in their closet. They will tape them under bottle caps or bottled water. Anyway, just know I'm sure there's other ways that they are hidden, but those are some of the things that I have been told, and as I've talked to teenagers and young adolescents and those who are using. So, and right now, Mary Beth, let's do another poll.
Okay, everybody, we're going to launch another poll, and the question will be, which is not a warning sign of opiate use? Which is not a warning sign of opiate use? So go ahead. Which is not a warning sign of opiate use? Okay, we're going to close the poll in another few seconds, so if you haven't put your answer in, go ahead. All right, I'm going to close that poll and share the answers with you. So which is not a sign of opiate use? And it is, the answer is dilated pupils. If the pupils are dilated, that's the normal function of a pupil. It's when the pupils are constricted and like pinpoint. The sniffing and scratching, sneezing, the prick marks, isolation, personality changes could be signs of opiate use.
Okay, so let's kind of switch gears here and let's talk about the difference between someone overdosing or being high. How are you going to know? Well, in recognizing an opiate overdose, if someone is really, really high from an opiate, their muscles are going to become relaxed. They are going to most likely have slow or slurred speech. And then again, that sleepy look and that nodding off is a telltale sign. And the pinpoint pupils, always look for those two things. They will usually respond to stimulation like yelling or doing a chest rub, which is called a sternal rub or sternum rub, and pinching. Now, when someone is overdosing, they could have a deep snoring or gurgling or a death rattle or a wheezing. And I tell people, we have gotten reports back when teenagers have overdosed. There was a story that was out a few months ago about some teenagers who had cut school, and they had used some pills, some opiate pills, and one of the kids died. And the friend said, I did not know, first of all, that you could die. We just thought you could die from injecting. The other thing was that they had said, we just thought he was sleeping because he was snoring. And actually what was happening, he had an obstructed airway. And so when an overdose, sometimes you might not have absence of breathing right away. You might have the deep snoring or the gurgling, but they will eventually have the blue-gray skin like to their lips and fingertips. They may be sweaty or clammy, or their breathing might be very slow or irregular or has stopped, and then they don't respond to stimulation. You don't want to take time to put them in a shower. You want to, if you know CPR, immediately begin to do your assessment and begin to implement CPR. But again, I want to, like in the progression, just remember you only have 4 minutes before somebody, between 3 to 4 or 5 minutes before somebody is totally brain dead. I know when my daughter overdosed and we found her in the basement, she was breathing very slow, but she was very sweaty, clammy, pale, blue, lips were blue, but she was just taking a breath every now and then. And so there's usually this, the slow breathing, and then the cessation of breathing, and then the pulse will become faint, and then the pulse will stop. So because of the lack of oxygen. So the big thing is they don't respond when you shake them or yell at them. And there is a medication which can reverse an opiate or opioid overdose, and that is called naloxone. Another name for this is called Narcan. And there are 3 FDA-approved forms, IV, IM, and nasal. And so in the left-hand corner there, you see that's what they use in the hospitals. And then on the right-hand corner there are different types. The FZL, the yellow and purple box there, is the automated one that is really a really cool thing. It talks to you and talks you through the overdose and tells you what to do and to inject it. The orange package is the nasal that you have to assemble. And then there's the newest package out, the Narcan, in the pink and white box. It's a double dose now. You don't have to assemble anything. You just take it out and use it and squirt it in the nose. Now, there are states that have what they call Naloxone Laws, and you can go to the Network for Public Health Law to find those states. It works only on opiates again. So again, when you respond to an opiate overdose, if you know CPR, you're going to do CPR. If you don't know CPR, I would really encourage you to get CPR trained through the Red Cross or through the American Heart Association. They do have a new algorithm out for opiate overdoses, and you're to call 911, breathe for that person for 30 seconds because oxygen is what they need the most, and give the naloxone if you have it, rescue breaths for 3 minutes, then give the second dose of naloxone if needed, and then put them in the recovery position and stay until help arrives. There's a lot more to this. It depends how soon you find them, but just remember you only have 4 minutes, 4 minutes until you can be brain dead. So oxygen is of the utmost importance. And again, I would encourage you to know CPR if you don't already have your certification. Now, in talking about the Network for Public Health Law, there are all but 3 states that have passed legislation for naloxone for lay people to be able to carry this. Like Kansas and Montana and Wyoming are the only 3 states right now that don't allow you to carry this as a third person. So I would encourage you, if I know in Kentucky that anybody as a third party can carry this medication, whether you're a law enforcement, first responder, school teachers, a parent, anybody, someone's actively using, with the company that I founded, the Kentucky Harm Reduction Coalition, we do naloxone trainings across the state, and we are able to provide the naloxone through a grant. So, and we go to all types of venues. So let's talk about this. What do you do? What do you do? There are 2 aspects to remember when knowing what to do. First of all, what to do for yourself and getting help for yourself, and then getting help for your child. Now, in talking about yourself, one of the mistakes that I made early on is I didn't share. I didn't seek support. I really looked at this as a moral issue, and this was a family issue that we could deal with ourselves. Well, I lost my son, and so I'm here to tell you, you've got to break your silence, and you've got to seek help and support. You can do that through Al-Anon. You can do that through PAL groups. PAL groups are parents of addicted loved ones, that are groups that are now popping up across the country. Actually, I called the founder of the PAL group after Gabriel died, and I still had 2 children at the time in an active addiction, and he is a parent addiction coach. And so consider a parent addiction coach. And he coached me over the phone. He didn't charge me a thing. I'm not saying he would do that for everybody, but I just called him one day and I was like, I need help. But find a safe place to share. There are going to be support groups that you can go to. There are great support groups on social media, but seek professional help, one-on-one counseling with someone that is experienced with addictions and with drug abuse. You're going to have to educate yourself about addiction. I was not educated, and yet I was an anatomy and physiology professor at a nursing college. I was not educated about addiction. I moralized it. So educate yourself not just about the addiction, but about the behaviors, about the manipulation, about the lying, the secretiveness. Recognize those guilt statements and the blame shifting that they will place upon you when you confront them. But you've got to confront them if you know they are using. You cannot be passive. Do not be passive. You're going to have to develop a plan, and the Partnership for Drug-Free Kids has a toll-free number that you can call to talk with a coach to help you develop a plan if you need to intervene. But intervene early. Don't wait. The biggest regret that I have is that I did not intervene early enough for my child. So don't wait. You might do a drug screen if you suspect it. Now, understand there are tricks to passing this, okay? No, I would turn off the water, turn the toilet water blue, and turn off the faucets, even if you're standing in there with them. Know that they can buy urine from people. But anyway, we'll talk a little bit later, but there are tricks to passing this. So make sure that if you're really suspecting this and you do a drug screen, that you want to make sure that the drug screen is going to be not a false positive or a false negative. So understand also about the brain chemistry behind why some teens may not be able just to quit on their own. Repeated drug use changes the brain. Brain imaging studies of people with drug addiction show changes in the areas of the brain that are very, very critical to judgment in your prefrontal cortex, decision-making, learning, and memory and behavior and control. Quitting is very, very difficult, even for those who are ready. And NIDA, the National Institute for Drug Abuse, has a very excellent video that explains why drugs are so hard to use, so you can go to that. But also, I would encourage you to do drug screening and monitoring, but be aware that there are ways that they can bypass that. So let's talk about your child. What do you do for your child? Well, if you notice there's a link there, and all this is from the National Institute of Drug Abuse. And this is where I'm going to point you to, because they have some of the best information that's out there. You are going to seek professional help, seek professional treatment. This information is very easily accessible, again, on their website. You can see that link right there, and I would encourage you to go there. There is a step-by-step process that you can follow. What do you do if your teen or young adult has a problem with drugs? And recognizing that once you confront your teenager, they're going to have a lot of fear, because people of all ages with substance use disorders live in fear and of what's going to happen if their drugs are taken away. So you can ensure your teen that you want to make sure that they're going to get professional help, and you will keep him or her safe, as comfortable as possible in the detoxification process. But be sure and let your teen know that family and loved ones are going to stand by them and offer their support. You don't want to shame them, and you don't want to blame shift, and you don't want to manipulate them emotionally, and you don't want to deny or enable or be really passive, okay? You're going to have to stand by them and ask for the help that you need from professionals, and that is the very first important step. And you can do that by going to your pediatrician, who can screen for signs of drug use or another related drug health issues. You might want to ask them first if they're comfortable with that, because maybe some of them don't have standard assessment tools, or if they can refer you to somebody. But you can also contact an addiction specialist directly. There are over 3,500 board-certified physicians who specialize in addiction in the United States. And you can go to the American Society of Addiction Medicine website. There's a physician finder there. You can go to the homepage of the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. They have a child and adolescent psychiatry finder on their website. So you and your physician can decide if your teen or young adult should be referred to treatment. It takes a whole lot of courage to seek help for a child with a possible drug problem, because there's going to be a lot of hard work ahead for both of you. It does interrupt academic and personal and possibly athletic milestones expected, that you would have in your teen years, but treatment has to be there. Treatment does work, and teens can recover, although it may take some time and it might take some patience. But treatment does enable young people to counteract addictions. It disrupts the effects of their brain and behavior so they can regain control of their life. So you may want to be sure that your teen is healthy before venturing into the world of more independence. You've got to get them help. Now, I will give you just a little bit of a note here. You want to make sure that whoever you take them to be screened, that they're unbiased in their referral. We've had a few issues here. I work with alongside the Jefferson County Attorney's Office here. We have what we call Casey's Law here, and we've referred people out to get screened, but they will screen them and say, oh, you need to come to our place, and we have outpatient, intensive outpatient, when actually that person might need intensive inpatient. So just be aware. Ask yourself, are you going to put them in state, out of state, short-term, long-term, intensive outpatient? But you should be able to get that from your assessment. Now, what I did do here, I know this is a lot of information, and so I created this acronym, hopefully to help you. And just remember the word help. I need help. And so hopefully this will help you not to feel so overwhelmed with what to do. But I would say, first of all, use the Neato website or call the toll-free for Partnership for Drug-Free Kids. That can get you connected to a counselor and to an addiction coach. But as it relates to discovering your child is using opiates, remember that word, help. Help is help. Seek professional help immediately. Evaluate. This is just talking about getting them assessed. And that will come with getting them the help from their profession, from the professional. And locate, you're going to look at treatment options and suggestions or referrals from your qualified healthcare professional. But you might want to research your options yourself as well. And then place your child in some type of a treatment program if they are addicted and abusing drugs. Is it going to be inpatient? Is it going to be outpatient? Is it going to be short-term, long-term? It's going to depend on the severity and the assessment outcomes. Now, in this process, we're going to hand this back over to Mary Beth, and we're going to look at another poll.
Okay, everybody, we're going to go ahead and launch the last poll, which is heroin or opioids can cause an overdose by, and I'm going to launch that poll. And so go ahead and read the question and then go ahead and start putting in your answers. Okay, we're going to give it just another few seconds and then we'll close this poll. Okay, so the answer is 100% is that they will can overdose by all of the above, including injection. So what we really wanted to make sure everybody was aware of is that they can ingest it, snort it rectally, and including injection, but they can overdose by using any one of these methods to go into an overdose. So it's just not through injecting.
Thank you, Mary Beth. And so we are towards the end of our presentation, and what we're going to look at now are just different resources for you, and of course you'll get the PDF handout as well. The GP 930 is a site that I developed in my son's name after he died. 930 is his birthday, September 30th. But on there you'll find a resource page for parents and for people who want to look. There's books, there's blogs, there's treatments, there's parent addiction coaches, there's some videos on there. And connection to the PAL groups if you want to start a PAL group in your state. I like this group as opposed to Al-Anon. I like Al-Anon, but I needed more education. And PAL is that provides education. So they have a different setup for parents, and all the resources are free. And you can get on their website and download all the resources you want and start your own group. Of course, the Kentucky Harm Reduction Coalition, we have treatment and recovery help in that site. Most of it's for Kentucky, but we do have out-of-state resources that we have plugged into. And then SAMHSA has a national helpline that you can go to for help. And then I just recently discovered this new site, Addiction Resources for Parents and Educators. Excellent, excellent resource. And then the Night of Teen Resources, that's created for middle and high school students, teachers, parents, offers an array of educational experiences in the neuroscience of the brain, and offers a lot of support to educators and parents as well. And they have an excellent page, and that's the page we went over, what to do if you find that your teen is using drugs. And of course, the Night of Medicine Cabinet. High school seniors, like you say, reported that they got 52% of them got them right there in their home from families or relatives. So you want to make sure that if you do have prescription drugs that you have to take, secure them, remove any expired ones, unwanted ones, or unused ones, and so that your friends and siblings and even pets can get a hold of them. Again, the Partnership for Drug-Free Kids, excellent site. Provides direct support to parents dealing with a child's drug abuse. And then you see the parent toll-free number down there at the bottom. You can always call them if you need to talk to somebody. Operation Parent, of course, nonprofit here, and we're very, very grateful for them and for their providing ongoing education and support to parents raising teens. And then I tell you, I wrote a book. Parent of an Adult Addict, Hope for a Broken Road. This is, I wrote it a year after my son Gabriel died. It's a parent resource book. It's answers those questions, what to do, what not to do, and then how do you get help. And then I do talk a little bit in there about my faith and the hope that I have, and even in losing my son. Again, if you want to do any drug testing, the kit includes, you can get it from Operation Parent. It's a 1 instant 12-panel dip test, urine-based, and you see all the things that it can test for. It has an instant alcohol, nicotine, spice, one family pledge contract, and then educational brochures for $29.99. And I'm going to hand this over to you, Mary Beth. Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here today.
Everybody, thank you so much, Arlene, for being here. I do want to just mention to go on to our website at operationparent.org. We have a store, in which case if you are interested in having an in-home drug testing kit in your house, we do sell this drug testing kit for $29.99. You can order that online. Please take note, if you do go to our website and our store, we're having a little glitch. When you look at the drug testing kit, it says it's $49.99. But when you click on it to order, it does show the right price. We're trying to get that fixed. It's just a little glitch we have right now. We also sell parent handbooks. Just want to make you aware of their availability and what they are. We have our 7th edition out of our parent handbook. We have a middle and high school version that you see on the right-hand side. It covers over 40 topics of the most common things that parents may deal with or experience in raising a preteen or teen. So anywhere from the digital world, drugs, alcohol, depression, anxiety, suicide, to legal issues. Very easy to read, talks about trends, misconceptions, warning signs, where do I go for more help. They sell for $19.99 a copy. We do sell those in bulk, and there is bulk pricing available. On the left-hand side, you see our elementary handbook. This is a handbook we just developed and just came on the market this summer for $5.99. Just brings it down to an elementary level. What are the things that parents need to start talking to their kids about now? So boundary setting, use of cell phones, how do you deal with friends, how do you deal with bullying? So if you can order both of these items from our website, the middle and high school comes in a Spanish version, a Christian edition, and then our standard English edition. The elementary handbook is in our standard edition and a Christian edition. Again, they're available at our store. So right now I'm going to just turn it over and see if there are any questions that anybody has. So if you have a question, you can go ahead into your question panel, and where it says to enter your question here, I'll wait a few moments to see if any questions come in. And if there aren't, right now I'm not seeing anything. Okay. Anybody have a question? Let's see. All right, I have a question coming in now. Does the middle school discuss medical marijuana and/or recreational marijuana laws? I'm going to answer that one, and then Arlene is more knowledgeable on the heroin and the opioid side. But I do presentations out in the community regarding drugs and alcohol in addition to social media and all those kinds of things. But as I know, I'm a parent of a middle schooler. And, I'm sorry, I'm a parent of a high schooler. And in the health class right now, they have not discussed marijuana, which I find rather interesting, considering it's one of the most abused drugs by our youth. So it really goes by your state and also the site-based council at your schools as to what is being taught about drugs and alcohol. But as I mentioned, not every state is mandating that, and then you do have the legalization of marijuana in other states, which makes it even a more difficult discussion. So at this moment, I can't answer that for every state because there is no clear-cut answer. Your best bet is to go to your school and ask, do they teach it in the health classes? Do they address it? I would really encourage for any parent out there to attend informational sessions so you understand the dangers of recreational marijuana. I'm not talking medical, I'm talking recreational, especially on the developing adolescent brain. Operation Parent does provide community presentations, and I do travel and provide those presentations. So if you have anything that you're looking for community presentation, go on our website or give us a call. Let's see if there's another question. The middle school book. Hold on, let me see if I can see that whole question. Okay. Will you host further webinars on this topic? Actually, Arlene and I were discussing the other day that we may break this up into 2 sessions and go a little bit into more detail, just to give a little bit more of a chance to talk more about the heroin opiate side, and then on the how do you know and what to do side, and break them in half. But I know we will be doing more webinars each month. Last month we hosted one just on alcohol and marijuana and the developing brain. That was our first one, so I believe my thinking is I will run that again, probably in January, and then incorporate other topics as we go along. But thank you for asking. Actually, yeah, good question. What other topics would you like to know? And in our survey, we do actually have that as a question in our survey, is what other topics would you like covered? Arlene, does your book discuss marijuana? No, it does not. Her book really discusses addiction to opiates, heroin, and other opiates, and what to do. It's a wonderful book. How prevalent is heroin in Oldham County schools, and how are the schools dealing with trafficking? Do you have an answer there, Arlene? Here, hold on.
Hi. I don't really have the stats as far as Oldham County schools and the trafficking that's there, but you can go to the Office for Drug Control Policy, and they have a per se county by county report of this last year of what's going on in the counties. I'm not aware of if they're reporting by school. The report doesn't include that, but it does include all the 120 counties in Kentucky. And I hope that answers your question. That's the best that I can do. What is my opinion of the Neato exchange program? Well, let me just tell you this. If you would have asked me this 2 years ago, I was absolutely against it. But now with rethinking with the HIV outbreak in Indiana, and just yesterday there was a report out with the Office of Drug Control Policy in Kentucky that of all the counties in the United States, that there are 54 of the counties in Kentucky that are at risk for HIV outbreak. And I used to be against it, but I have come full circle to understand that this is a public health issue. And we have a crisis on our hand with Kentucky being #1 in the state for Hep C. And now we're looking at an outbreak for HIV in Kentucky. And there's Neato exchanges do a couple of things. I'm not an expert. We do have a harm reduction specialist that is on our team and who is one of the founders as well, who deals solely with syringe exchange. I deal more with the naloxone, but I will say this, and being with the people that I work with now on the board in with the organization, that I have learned that needle exchanges keep people, it's a public health issue here. You have people that aren't just dying from overdoses, they're dying because they're sharing needles and the needles are actually breaking off. And once you understand the reward system in the brain and how addiction can hijack the brain and what it does, you can begin to see how this can be an asset to the public health crisis of the HIV and even of the overdoses and of abscesses and people dying. So I am a proponent of needle exchange now, and I actually go down to the health department a couple times a month, and I engage with people that are actively using, that are coming out of the needle exchange. So it gives you a way to treat people with respect and to hopefully get them help. Hope that answers your question.
For those of you that are taking note of the time, we are closing in on 2 o'clock. We have a few more questions coming in. If you want to sign off, go right ahead. We will send you a follow-up email with the link to this program so you can watch it. Please take care of your downloads. But Arlene is willing to stay for a few more minutes to answer the remainder of the questions. So if you want to stay on and hear the remainder of the answers, that is not a problem. So let's move on to the next question. Is it true that in Kentucky anyone can give naloxone, and where does one get training?
Yes, according to the Naloxone Law in Senate Bill 192, there are provisions in there that allow third parties to carry the medication. So yes, you have a naloxone law, and yes, anybody in the community can carry it now. And you can get training. There are different ways depending on where you are in Kentucky. Up in northern Kentucky, there's a group called Northern Kentucky PAR that hosts naloxone trainings. Up in Lexington, there's a place called Voices of Hope Lexington that cover that region of the state, and another one called Stop Heroin in Lexington. They cover the state, and then of course Kentucky Harm Reduction Coalition travels throughout the state. So if you can go to our website and look and see it in our calendar and see where we're going to be and join us in a community training. And if you're an agency, we do charge $80 per kid if you're an agency that has funding. If you're wanting a training in your area, we'll come to you. All you have to do is contact us, give us a date. We do charge gas to come if we have to leave outside of Louisville 20 miles. But the other thing is with the ASAP boards, the substance abuse policy boards, you can also get funding through them to cover the kids and the training. So I hope that answers your question. How about around the country? There is a site. I would go to the Harm Reduction Coalition, not the Kentucky Harm Reduction Coalition, but there is a website you can go to for the country called Harm Reduction Coalition. They have a place in New York and California, but they can tell you what states also have training in naloxone. So I hope that answers your question. We have any more questions? Just a thank you. Wait. Okay, we have somebody else putting in a question. I can't read it. Would you read it to me?
Project 930 that comes to you for training.
No, that's a personal outreach that I have. That is not a nonprofit. I just do that. I go, but it's the Kentucky Harm Reduction Coalition that would come. I am part of both of those, but the Gabriel Project 930 is a personal outreach that I have for myself because I share a lot of my faith in there, and with the Kentucky Harm Reduction Coalition, it's another team of people. Hope that answers your question.
All right, if there's any last questions coming in, go ahead and post it. I have just a comment. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us, your children's story, and recognizing faith as an asset. Thank you, Jennifer. Anybody else have a question? Go ahead and post that now. All right. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and close up today's webinar. I really appreciate you all being here. And as I mentioned, you will be receiving an email in a few hours with the presentation, has a link and also a survey. We would love to hear from you just so we know what to present in the future as we continue our webinar series and education. And I encourage you to visit operationparent.org to learn more about what we do and what we offer to parents and caregivers of teens and preteens. And thank you very much.